You simply couldn't count the number of things that Jordan Peterson loves to talk about, ranging from love to women's rights,
increase in the safety of the street, and opened up the world to the freedom of women,
to even your everyday conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy theories, in some sense, are the fantasies of disagreeable people. So disagreeable people are very skeptical.
But there's something that the man simply can't find the words to explain. It's his belief in God, or the lack, perhaps.
Do you mean to say the words, I believe in God? Does that indicate that you believe in God?
I think of religious matters a lot. I would consider myself a deeply religious person.
Neither you nor I could be sure of whether he believes in the existence of a supreme entity or not, because in the simplest of words, he's still confused about it himself, and every single time he's standing facing this exact question, he likes to reply by saying that he doesn't like it very much.
So people often ask me, do you believe in God? Which I don't like that question.
Everybody's tried putting him on the spot, and he does recognize the fact that he talks about religious topics quite a lot. Not to mention, millions of people have seen his interesting take on biblical stories where he mainly focuses on Genesis. But when we talk about God's existence, why is it that he's so reluctant to declare his position? As I said, even if he doesn't know exactly where his hesitation comes from, he tries to behave as though God exists.
I probably believe that. But I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief, and I don't understand it.
But in the end, it scares the crap out of him that maybe a sacred superior entity does exist.
I act as if God exists and that I'm terrified that he might.
I'm sure you guys find yourselves confused by his contradictions, and some people believe that he's being deceptive on purpose. I mean, there's only one thing that people really want to know at the end of the day. Is acting as if God exists enough to be considered a believing Christian? Peterson has some beef with the question itself. He likes to assert the fact that the question about his belief in God is pretty tough for him to answer, but that's not because he doesn't know how to answer it, but simply because the question leaves him in a very black and white situation. To him, it seems as though God's existence is a misunderstood concept, simply because it's not a physical form that exists in this world, or even outside of it. Instead, it's supposed to be seen within the things that exist among us, because as we look around us, everything has been created by something else. Nothing comes from nothing, which is what differentiates any other entity from God. So, in the end, God is the only existence that was never created, and that is what gives it significance. And as the professor says, asking whether God exists isn't the right question in the first place. I mean, you can probably see how carefully this man chooses his words when it comes to answering significant questions like this one. It might seem like he's dodging the question at hand, but in reality, he's only stating what he knows. But as I speak of the dilemma the professor's facing on the existence of God, there's a far more important question that needs to be answered first. How does he define God? And he has answered that quite a few times, but the answer isn't the conventional type that you might be expecting. He went all philosophical with his answer, saying that he sees God as the spirit that everyone must try to imitate to become their best selves.
God, in the highest sense, is the spirit that you must emulate in order to thrive.
What he means by this, as he went on to explain, is that you pick out all the best qualities from human beings all around the world. And these can be anything, including kindness, empathy, truthfulness. When you're done with that, you just combine all of them. You ultimately end up with the purest form in existence, and it becomes a pattern that ends up representing God. He thinks that you could never get any closer than that to understanding God. And he might be right, because relating aspects of God to his creations is what can help one understand what he is like. Instead, if we try to represent them as a spirit that we have never seen or felt, all that would lead to is distance and misunderstanding. And honestly, what good can God do if his creation cannot even understand it? The one thing I love about this man is how simple he makes things seem. But I'm about to jinx myself right now because there's more confusion coming up ahead. He's all jumbled up about his own belief in Christianity, and that can probably explain why he's so against keeps being asked about his faith in God, because ultimately it forces him to have to look into himself and reflect on the things he finds hard to process. In a podcast, the professor mentioned that what people have in the figure of Jesus is an actual individual who lived in real life, in addition to being a myth.
And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived, plus a myth.
And in his experience, many people couldn't realize that fact. I know it seems pretty simple and self-explanatory, but Jordan's talking about a deeper understanding of Jesus' true life experiences. In fact, he thought that the reality of Christ was way too horrible to believe with one's heart and soul, and he said it while he was on the verge of crying. His point was that if you were to sit and realize the events of what happened, he wasn't sure what would happen to the true believers.
A reality to fully believe. I don't even know what would happen to you if you fully believed it.
So if I were to cut to the chase, he's trying to say that most believers have failed to put themselves in the shoes of Jesus Christ. And since they haven't even been able to understand their God, how can they truly put their faith in him? Don't get him wrong, he's not trying to mock anybody out there. But he did talk about the most important thing that can be the identifying factor of a true believer. He thinks that a person's behavior could show you everything about their religious beliefs. I mean, you can't just come up and say that you believe in God and then walk away like there's no weight to those words. To him, it is a serious commitment to an entity that is present and all-knowing, and declaring belief isn't as easy as it sounds. What's more is that he mentioned how people would undoubtedly say some pretty bad things about the Catholic Church, generally speaking, and he went on to address the way the corruption existing within it manages to ruin the reputation and standing of the entire belief.
Corruption, for example. The church is actually quite guilty.
Because in the end, what people see is what they'll comment on. Looking at everything wrong among the people who practice Christianity makes everybody question the faith altogether. It's a pretty important question that the man brilliantly poses to everybody he's addressing. If you do believe in Jesus being the Son of God, why do you continue to do all these things that you shouldn't be doing?
Really, you believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, and yet you act that way.
He's not afraid to call the church out for being guilty of cleaning up the messes that people make. Not just that, but his point is to make us see all the people who practice Christianity in theory, but never act like it, which is what ends up ruining the entire faith. But in the end, would the Christian community side with his perspective? Most of them stay wary of this man's words. While you and I might think that he's super smart, a lot of Christians feel that is a negative threat to their religion, because while he uses a lot of the same terms that Christians use to explain their beliefs, his meaning stays different from theirs, and this shift in interpretation would make probably anybody relate to his words, including even Jews and Muslims. On the other hand, there are a lot of people who feel that his words make sense to them. Who knows? Maybe Peterson's gonna help someone find God after all. And that's all we've got for Jordan Peterson's views on God's existence. See you in the next video.